And up next, CityNet 30 takes you downtown for the weekly luncheon meeting of the City Club of Portland. Live weekly coverage of City Club is produced through the facilities of Portland Cable Access. Now we join the City Club for this week's program.
Charlie Davis, where is your question? Please prompt. Okay. Broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from CM2M Hill, U.S. Bank, and Enterprise Rent-A-Car Foundation. As always, we are very grateful for their ongoing support. And now to today's program. Today's program is on Portland's Community Court project, and we look forward to a provocative discussion of the philosophical and practical underpinnings of moving the locus of repairing communities to the actual place where they start falling apart. It is a privilege to introduce today's three panelists. Judge Clifford Freeman of the Circuit Court of Multnomah County presides over Portland's Community Court project. Judge Freeman was appointed to the Multnomah District Court bench, now the Circuit Court, by Governor John Kitzhaber on Valentine's Day, 1996. His distinguished legal career includes his serving as pro tem juvenile court referee for Multnomah County, civil commitment hearings attorney for the Metropolitan Public Defender's Office, and the State of Oregon's advocate for minority, women, and emerging small business enterprises. Judge Freeman attended Portland Public Schools and received both his undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Oregon. He is a member of the Board of Directors of the Oregon chapter of the American Leadership Forum, the Oregon Community Foundation's Nominating Advisory Group, and has served with distinction on several other local, state, and national boards and commissions. He was recently appointed as an Oregon delegate to the National Conference of State Trial Judges Judicial Division of the American Bar Association. Michael Schrunk has served as the elected district attorney in Multnomah County for almost 20 years. The Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, with over 200 staff members, including 97 attorneys, reviews approximately 30,000 cases annually. Like Judge Freeman, Mr. Schrunk is also a graduate of the University of Oregon Law School. He is a recognized leader in several innovative justice initiatives, including the Neighborhood District Attorney Program, the Drug Court, and of course, Portland's Community Court project. He currently chairs the Regional Organized Crime Narcotics Task Force and is a member of Multnomah County's Public Safety Coordinating Council. A sought-after lecturer and author, he is the recipient of several national awards, including the United States Department of Justice's Public Service Award for Community Leadership. We are also very fortunate to have with us today well-known community activist and artist Richard Brown. Mr. Brown's resume reads like a primer for Community Involvement 101. He actually defines himself as a community activist who happens to be a photographer. Mr. Brown currently serves on 8 community service boards and commissions, including the Police Chiefs Forum, Albina Head Start, the Citizens Crime Commission, and the Community Court. I believe it's important for artists to be involved in ways that bring attention to issues that impact our society, he says. His goal, in his own words, is to produce a conscious and forceful positive image of African Americans not often seen in media images, and to be a praise singer for our community. Much has been written about him, and he has published widely as well. In recognition of his extraordinary public service, as well as his professional accomplishments, he has received 20 awards since 1985. That's more than one a year. A sampling of these honors includes an Excellence in Journalism Award from the Society of Professional Journalists for a photographic essay on Black life in Oregon, the Spirit of Portland Mayor's Award, the Oregon Community Foundation's George A. Russell Community Service Award, and the Sharing and Caring Award from the Tiger Woods Foundation. In addition, his photographs are in several public and private collections, and his work is exhibited widely in both private galleries and public spaces. We have an extraordinary hour ahead of us, and it's now my honor to turn the program over to Judge Freeman.
Thank you.
Actually, Mike Schrunk is going to begin, and so thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Thank you, Harriet, and members. We're all delighted to be here. And hopefully what we'd like to present to you today in spending 10 to 15 minutes apiece, and that's difficult for Richard, is kind of a historical, where we are, how we got here, and then Judge Freeman, from some of the innovative things he's been able to do from the bench and give you the judicial perspective, and then followed up lastly with Richard, talking about what it is in the community and some of the things he sees. And hopefully we'll spark some dialogue, some interest. You'll give us some gentle pushes and prods and maybe even some swift kicks in the right direction. And we all are not thin-skinned, and we need your help, and we welcome this opportunity. Portland has a rich history, not only just in this room, members of the City Club, but all citizens, of being actively involved. And I think it's no secret that we had one of the first and best, and still have one of the foremost community policing endeavors. Getting officers and getting the police force interacting with the residential and commercial citizens of this jurisdiction. I was fortunate, with the help of the county commissioners and some fortunate grants, we were able to start going into the neighborhoods with community prosecutors or neighborhood DAs. Many of you are aware of some of the programs that we have, and we have 8 lawyers in the community. And a natural extension of that was community court. And how we got here, we went out to a lot of meetings. We got involved with a lot of neighborhood associations, a lot of citizen groups, and a lot of people told us, and I, newly elected, you elected me, and I was going to be out there at hell on wheels to murders, rapes, and armed robberies. Well, you start talking to the people in the neighborhood, and they worry about the quality of life crimes. And they say you ought to take care of business, but you ought to do the trespass, you ought to do the little dope dealing, you ought to do the prostitution that's a block away from my house, my kids got to walk by, the graffiti, the defecating in the doorways, the things like that. It makes the difference between people moving out of a wonderful urban environment into a gated community, or moving your business out to a strip mall, off of a freeway interchange somewhere. And so we looked around and decided, how can we affect this? And we got the police interested in arresting and citing people, and already the court system in downtown and the stone fortress of the courthouse and the Justice Center was overcrowded. There were dockets with 100 or 150 on them, and some of these quality of life crimes, nothing was happening. And quite frankly, nothing was happening because the DA wasn't doing much, and it was the last on a list of things that a judge had to do, and there was just no citizen input and involvement. We heard about a court. I was involved in a victims project in Red Hook, and we heard about a court in Midtown Manhattan called Midtown Community Court. And what happened, I had a chance to visit that. We had a chance to have our late presiding judge, Don Launder, spend some time, actually sat on the bench there. Judge Ellis, our current presiding judge, has done it. And we came back and we thought we could never match financially what happened in Midtown Manhattan, but some of the concepts of immediate justice, judicial involvement, defense involvement, immediate feedback to the community in the form of some sort of community restitution could be adopted in Portland. Started talking about that with various community groups. Back in September of '97, we called some of the usual suspects together and tried to form an ad hoc citizen committee. Richard was one of the usual suspects. And we talked about the idea, and immediately it was, well, you're not going to send sexual deviants or murderers and rapists out to the community. And we started working with that concept. And it became a reality. We partnered up with a lot of neighborhoods. We partnered up with the police bureau. We partnered up with the court system and the public defender's office. And one of the underlying concepts was to make the law, the rule of law, relevant, to give immediate feedback to citizen groups, to be fair, to have some accountability. At the same time, we had an opportunity through participation in a bond fund technology to get some money to wire a court or get laptops and online information out of the county. We were able to do that. We partnered up with the King's School, finding a site selection. And Judge Freeman can tell you how it is to schedule his court appearances around classes and recess and lunch hour. We met with the citizens and we had discussions at every level. What crimes they would feel comfortable with in the community. We went on, and then in March of '98, we had our first court appearance. And that was kind of exciting. It was an arraignment court. We were able to bring people in. We'd have them appear before a judge, and it was a plea court at that time. But it couldn't have been possible, and it's in almost a classroom setting. One of the citizen group debates was whether the judge, by that time Judge Freeman had been designated, and of course Judge Freeman, being a person of the people, said, "Oh, I don't want to be elevated. I just give me a desk and a chair and I can do it." Citizens said, no, you're going to have flags behind you, you're going to wear a robe, and you're going to be at least elevated up above everyone else. And it's kind of interesting when you start talking with people what the trappings and what it meant to bring court into the community. I suppose one of the big blessings is you don't have to look for a parking spot downtown if you're court appearance. But we had a public defender. One thing we found out is that people that were cited and brought into court were very needful people. With the help of our partners in the Public Defender's Office, Legal Services, and some of the other community partners, we're able to set up access to other social services, which is very, very important in keeping people out and keeping them from recycling into other offenses and other offenses. We went on, and it was successful. And other communities said, well, now wait. You've put this in Northeast, and you tell me that to be eligible to appear in front of Judge Freeman in a community court for these crimes, it has to either be someone who lives in that area or commits a crime in that area. Well, there's other areas of Portland, too. We were fortunate. By this time, we had caught the attention of some people with some funding, and we got another little bit of money to jumpstart it, and we've started another one in Southeast Portland, in the community center, in Mid-Southeast. We have on the drawing board, and hopefully we will have it open soon, by the end of the year, or certainly right after the first of the year, a West Side Community Court to deal with quality of life crimes. We hope to be able to run with that what's called a mental health docket out of that same court with some offenders that are, but for their mental problems, would not be in the system. And we think that's another special docket in a special way. We certainly can treat that population a heck of a lot better, more humanely, and yes, financially less expensive than locking them up in Dan Noley's jail. Well, what have we brought, and what are some of the concepts? Accountability, because people are held accountable. They don't slide out once Judge Freeman sentences them. There's a community service person right in the back of the courtroom who puts an arm on that person and schedules for that community service. You have on your table a brochure. We have a higher completion rate, a higher show-up rate of the community service. We brought something back to the community, and we share the concepts of what's called restorative justice. Not just, pay back to an individual you've stolen from or something like that, but to give something back to the community. I think we're also fair. We don't stamp a person a felon or a criminal forever. Most of these cases are dismissed at the successful completion. Some are not dismissed because of the nature of their crime, but they're all treated fairly. And probably most of all, and most important to me, and because I'm a lawyer, is I think we are building the concept of the rule of law. And I've seen that deteriorate. I walked in with Charlie Davis, and we were talking about a conference that we both attended out at community college. And one of the things that seems to be lacking in the community is a respect for the law and the fact that the law applies to everyone. Sure, it applies to IBM or the tobacco companies and the triple murderers and the serial killers, but how about the other quality of life crimes? And I think we've got a long ways to go, but I think we're on our way there. And I think the community court is one big step in getting us in that direction. Now, the next person, the public defender and I went through with the citizens group, and we looked high and low because it takes a unique person. And we lobbied the presiding judge, and we lobbied the judge to accept the assignment. And we were very, very fortunate to be able to get the Honorable Clifford Freeman. Now, Clifford did work for the public defender at one time, but Clifford and I went to law school at one time together. And Clifford has been a magnificent person in the court, and if you could see the individuals interact with him, you would truly be amazed. And I think we are very fortunate. And something else, Clifford grew up in the community, and that is very important. With that, I turn it over to the Honorable Judge Freeman.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. What I thought I'd do was talk about what we do at community court and how we're different from downtown, and then what's in it for the major players. What we do is we take pleas of guilty to what are called quality of life crimes. A lot of these crimes happen to be thefts, and as you can see in the information on the blue sheet, most of the crimes are theft or shoplifting crimes. There are some trespass cases and some prostitution cases. For some reason, we've gotten more prostitution cases out at the Southeast Court, which is out on Southeast 62nd and Duke at the Brentwood-Darlington Community Center. Tend to get more prostitution cases there than we do in Northeast Portland. But I'm told that's because they've had some stings recently, and that tends to produce defendants. But anyway, we take pleas to those courts, and then through a cooperation of the District Attorney's Office, public defenders, and the community advisory groups, they've developed a recommended matrix of a certain amount of hours for each offense, and also how many days in jail somebody would spend if they failed or refused to complete their community service. And so they've classified the offenses, and 0 for a violation, 1, 2, and 3, 3 being, I think, assault cases, which we don't get too many of those. And then if it's the first or second or third or fourth time that a person is in community court. And I generally will follow that matrix. It's not hard and fast, but it's more of an expectation that the defendants can have when they come and enter their pleas. We usually give people 2 to 3 weeks to complete their community service. In a lot of the theft cases, people are required to attend a theft education class called Theft Talk, and it usually takes time to schedule that in, so those take a little longer, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Sometimes people have special situations, and we'll give them more time if we need it. Somebody was in yesterday, and I think, one person was going on vacation, another person was going on school. We try and make it something that we want to work with the people because we think it's important that they do the community service and then they get the benefit of the program. How we're different from what goes on downtown? Well, the first thing is we're out in the community, so that's different. And I'm told by historians that in previous days it was common to have courts in large cities in small community areas. But I'm also told that there began to be a problem with corruption of judges and judges making homer calls and being influenced improperly by people, so they decided to centralize courts all over the country. I don't know if you knew about that or not, Mike, but I found that a little interesting. The other thing is that we try and get these cases closed, if you will, in about 4 months. We have somebody arraigned, they enter a plea, they do the community service, and the case is dismissed. We encourage them to come back for the dismissal, tell us a little bit about the work that they did in the community, and make any comments, and we'll give them a copy of the dismissal order. Lately, that's fallen off a bit. However, we're devising some ways to get people to come back. We found that to be a good way to close the circle. And interestingly enough, a number of people who have been required to do the community service have come back and said, you know, I really enjoyed doing this volunteer work. I've never done anything like this before. I want to hook up with this community organization. I'm going to volunteer to help clean up or volunteer to assist at the Red Cross Center and wash their trucks or fill these bags. And so that's had a good effect for a number of people. The other thing is we don't have probation. When the case is done, if the person completes what they're supposed to do, we'll dismiss the case, and that's for the first time for some of the lesser cases. With cases like prostitution, we're not dismissing those, but we will enter an order of discharge, and if a person completes, I think 1 or 3 years of crime-free conduct, then that charge is eligible for dismissal as well. I guess another thing that's different, and I started doing this in community court and I brought it downtown, and that is that after a person tells me how they want to plead to a charge, and that is they're going to plead guilty, then I ask them to tell me in their own words what exactly they did. So in New York they call it an elocution, but it's where a defendant has to say, I went into Fred Meyer and I stole some batteries or whatever it was. And what happens a lot of times is people say, well, I went in the store and I walked out with something and somebody came and caught me. And I'll usually encourage them to tell me that they stole something, because I know, and it's clear from the number of people that come before the court, it's difficult for people to stand up in a room full of people they don't know and say, I stole something. People don't see themselves as thieves or as people that would trespass or commit other crimes, and I think it's important for the people to embrace the conduct that they have done as a matter of the plea process. So that's something that I require. In addition to that, I have a discussion with the individuals about why they did it. And in that discussion, I try and find out why they did it. Sometimes people think, well, they say, well, I was stupid. And I say, well, that's not going to work. We're going to have to dig a little harder. And, well, I was hungry. I needed to steal some batteries to get some food. And then we'd get into the fact that there are a lot of places to get food, and it really wasn't about being hungry. And so we have a discussion. And in that discussion, I try and get a hook on a person into their life, into their personal situation, where I can then begin to talk about some positive ways that they might see this. It happens that a number of people have children, and a number of the people that are involved in stealing have children, and I ask them, have you told your kids about stealing? Yes. Yeah, well, okay. You've told them not to steal, right? Yes. But then you're stealing, right? Well, your actions speak louder than the words, right? So we go down that road, and it, I think, gets in a little deeper, because I do require them to have a conversation with me. Some conversations are short, but some are long. With people who are charged with prostitution, I talk to the people, usually the men, about if they have families, repercussions with their families, sexually transmitted diseases, and then also the subtle effects that prostitution can have on a community. If it's common to have a so-called situation where prostitution is free and open, then almost any woman that's in that community walking around going to the store for a carton of milk or newspaper is going to be accosted by somebody who assumes that because this is a woman, that this woman is willing to sell her body or sell favors for money. And that gets back into the concept of community that we're trying to foster by being located in the community court. What's in it for the players? For the defendants, for a lot of these cases, the defendants will be able to get the charge dismissed. They won't have probation, they won't have fees, and they'll be done with the matter. In addition to that, as I said, some can also get acquainted with the community service organization and find something positive about that. Another thing that we're able to do with community services is we're trying to kind of see the defendant as a whole person. We have service providers that can provide assistance with housing, employment, substance abuse problems, education, or the Oregon Health Plan. So we have these different service providers usually present in the court, although recently we've had a little fall off, and that's something we're working on. But even if the person is not present there, we'll make a referral, and in some cases the referral is part of the order that the defendant has to do, that they're going to go talk to the women that run the Prostitution Alternatives Program if they're a woman and they've been convicted of prostitution, and I require them to go to either 1 or 2 sessions. If somebody's got some mental health programs, I'm going to send them to one of the programs that can help you with mental health problems and give you a referral. If it's a housing problem or a food problem or education or employment, I make those referrals in court, and we have a social service intern worker that also assists in that process and does screening. In the screening that they do, they'll put that information into a computer, and for most of the people that come before me, I'll be able to bring that information up in front of me. So when I'm talking to John Smith, I see that John Smith has got 2 children who are under 15 years of age in the home, that he's employed full-time or he's not employed full-time. And on the next page I can see if the person has employment needs or substance abuse problems, and all that information is before me on computer, and it makes it very convenient. So that's one of the good things that's in it for the defendants. For the communities, there is a lot of community service work that's done in the community, and I think there are some dollar figures on the information sheet of the community service contributed to the community. Also, the people in the community are able to see the people working with the community court program in the community doing things. They help with community cleanup projects and other activities. The courts gain the fact that a case can be closed in a shorter period of time, maybe 4 months, as opposed to having somebody be on probation for 6 months or 12 months and maybe have somebody supervised and the like. So the courts get a chance to close cases. Sometimes we are also hosts to community nuisance conferences. Sometimes there might be a nuisance in the community, and they'll be in touch with the police, and we'll host a meeting for them where they can agree to abate the nuisances and how to go about that. And having said that, I'll turn over to Richard Brown.
Let me first say that one of the reputations that I brought to the discussion about the community court was based on an incident that happened in Singapore. A young man did some spray graffiti, and in Singapore they caned him. And we didn't hear a lot about that youngster for a long time, in fact 4 years. And I imagined that every time he saw a can of paint, his back started to tingle. And that became my solution to crime, because I thought we weren't being very successful at dealing with it. In our community, people get picked up for crimes, and before the cops get back on the street, they're on the streets. We weren't very confident that the systems to fight crime were working. I think one of the things about me, though, is I'm open to trying new things. So although at every opportunity I injected caning, I was listening to what folks were saying about community court. And I think people misinterpreted what I meant by caning. Caning is a very public kind of punishment, like the stocks and the police. Very public. You don't do that in a little room. You know, you're in the public square, you're tied up, and they begin to wail on you. More than that, more than just the pain, people are watching. People that you know are watching you get those licks. And that's got to hurt more than the pain, especially for spray painting, graffiti, for shoplifting, you know. So the community court became something that I really embraced because it was public. You know, not many people go downtown just to sit in the courtroom to see what's going on. And when you do that, it's really not very exciting. You know, after you've seen Perry Mason and the practice, real court is not very exciting. I thought that by bringing this to the community, you get community people looking eyeball to eyeball to these folks that have offended in our community. The shoplifters that come back to the community and sell their hot stuff, that say they're shoplifting because they're hungry. The people that sell drugs on the corner aren't the people that we're seeing in community court, but those are the people that need to get there also. You know, the crimes that don't get you a cell in jail, the crimes that don't send you on vacation for a long time, are the things that beat down the community. You know, prostitution. Sometimes you can get in a conversation about prostitution and people will talk about legalizing it. Well, I always believe that people want to legalize it because it's in my neighborhood. If it's in your neighborhood, we think twice about legalizing it. You know, so those are discussions that I don't want to have. One of the things that was mentioned about community court is it deals with the whole person. And I think that that's not what happens in the crime prevention system as it exists. If you go to prison as a drug addict, you may not use for 3 or 4 years, but when you come out, you might not use. When you come out, you're a dope addict. I remember a story of a man that was away for 8 years, and he said as soon as he hit the fresh air, his nose started running. The first thing he did was went to the dope house after 8 years of not using. So you go in jail, you come out a dope addict. You're still a dope addict. I believe that dope addicts are not necessarily bad people. And the more they don't look like me, the more people are beginning to accept that. You know, when they all look like me, then they were bad people. But when they become your sons and daughters, husbands and wives, then there's something more serious about it. And that's great, because now we look at all drug addicts, especially in community court, as people that have a problem, and that problem needs to be addressed. And shoplifting may just be an indication of the problem. So when they come to community court, we can begin to talk to them about the reasons they're stealing. And we can offer them help. And in some cases, we can even mandate that you do these things if you want to get this taken care of. That's great, because then people feel like somebody cares about them. You know, and when you sit, and I try to go to all of the court hearings, because in the community, I know a lot of folks. And people will sit at the lawyer's table, and I will look at them. And even if I don't know them, they must think that I've seen him somewhere. And it becomes embarrassing. It becomes embarrassing to stand up in front of all of these folks and say that I stole. It becomes embarrassing to stand up in a group of people and say I did something stupid. And it's not all homeless people that come through there. We have people of means that come through, that stole. They call it did something stupid, lapse of memory. You know, they have all the terms for it. I'm seeing a psychologist about it. You know, all the answers. but they stole. And that's what they have to face, and that's what they get to do when they come to community court. And they get to look in my eyes and try to figure out, where do I know him from? Where am I going to run into him? Because it's embarrassing when you think that you're all of that, and you get caught shoplifting, and then you're walking down the street. Oh, don't I know you from somewhere? Oh, yeah, community court. Oh. You know, so community court is great for me. It's allowed us to embrace people that haven't been embraced before. It allows us to try to reach out to folks that people have just thrown in jail when they did something wrong, when they've done something wrong. And they don't always get it the first time. They don't always get it the first time. They may shoplift again, and they will come back and they will go through the same thing. But I think eventually they get it. You know, I don't think anybody's going to shoplift and know that I can get this case thrown out if I do this community service and not come back because they're going to have to look at me. They're going to come back because the incentive is there. They're not going to go downtown and face jail if they can help it. So I have to believe that folks are deciding they're not going to steal. I don't think they're going to other communities to steal just so they don't get to come to community court. I think that people are seriously giving some thought to their lives and not offending again. And that's great. You know, when people come back to court after community service and want to shake the lawyer's hands, want to shake the DA's hands, say thank you to the judge, I don't think that happens downtown. You know, I don't think that people get their sentence and they walk out the door and they're angry. They are angry. When it's completed, they're still angry. They feel inconvenienced. So I don't think that what's going on in community court is soft on crime. We get that a lot. Oh, you only give them 8 hours of community service? Well, they get 8 hours plus me looking at them. You know, that's got to count for something. You know, you get 8 hours plus having to stand up there and tell the judge that I stole. Being prompted to tell the judge I stole. You know, we've got a lot of words to cover steal. And folks that come through community court know it. They know them all. You know, they're in denial big time. But the judge is persistent. You mean you stole? No, it was an accident. No, you stole, and then they finally get it. I stole. Yeah. Community court is great. It's not soft on crime, and it helps people. I think that's the biggest piece. It helps people. I'm a storyteller, so I can't stop without telling a story. In fact, I'll tell 2 stories. The first community court, we had a young lady came in that got picked up for prostitution. And after she had gone through the process, and came back to be released, I was talking to her outside, trying to find out what she thought about the program and if we were going to see her again. And she said, well, the program, you know, is okay, but you don't have to worry about seeing me anymore. As was said, we're located in King School. Her son goes to King School. And she said she will not be back because she didn't want her son to see her there. And she hasn't been back. Now, I don't know if she went over to the other side of town to sell her wares, but she hasn't been back. We had a woman come through that had a lot of problems, but on top of it, she was a drug addict. And she was nodding in the courtroom. And she got to see the judge, and she came with her husband, and her husband was someone I knew. I knew her, but I knew her husband very well. And they were both longtime drug users. And every time she'd come in, she came in 3 times, and each time the first 2 times she was sick. About 6 months after her last trip through, her husband called me, and he was down at Hooper. And he wanted me to know that he had turned himself in and that he wanted to stay in touch with me. And after he got out of Hooper, he went into a program, and we stayed in touch. And I visited him when he graduated from the program. And he told me, he said, you know, Richard, one of the things that helped me through, and this guy's in his 50s, long-time heroin addict. one of the things he said was, one of the things that helped me through the program was every time I came to community court, you all really wanted to help my wife. And I felt that there was help out there for both of us. And I just want you to know that community court is the reason that I'm clean. And that's been 9 months. That's been 9 months. The longest he's been clean in 20 or 25 years. And he feels good about himself. Because he's been medicated for so many years, he's got medical problems he's got to deal with. And they are big enough that he might go back out again. But he's determined to stay clean. He's determined to get those medical problems turned around. I'd like to stop here because, like I say, I like to tell stories, and community court presents a lot of them. Encourage each and every one of you to come out to community court and sit in and watch what goes on there. Thank you.
Great stories, thank you. In my work for the city, and Commissioner Charlie Hales, one of his assignments is overseeing code enforcement, housing nuisance violations, the meat and potatoes, nuts and bolts of city government. And because the city doesn't have a court system, we have a very, very weak enforcement process. So we have chronic repeat offenders, quality of life. Let me tell you, when someone's out there in his garage working all night with power tools and dismantling vehicles, the neighbors call, they complain, a case is opened, the guy is posted, says, yeah, I'll clean up my act, and he does for 2 weeks. And it goes over and over and over. And then he goes to a hearings officer and he gets a slap on the wrist. He gets liens applied to his house, but it doesn't matter because he's not going to sell his house. It doesn't hurt him in the pocketbook. And so quality of life on this issue is very frustrating. And I know maybe you can explain why the city doesn't have any more legal ability. But we would sure like to bring these chronic folks to the community court. Could you tell me how that would work?
Well, let me say that along those lines, we've had problems in the community with homeowners that haven't been taking care of their properties. And we've been able to funnel some of those through the neighborhood response team through community court. And the judges don't have any official duty there. But when you come before somebody that's got on this robe and there are 2 flags behind them, and there's a Multnomah County guard standing at the door, you assume that you need to be concerned. Yeah. And we've been able to correct a couple of problems that way.
If I might, I've only participated in one so-called nuisance situation. It had to do with a motel that was in the neighborhood where there was a lot of drug activity and prostitution activity, and people in the community got concerned, and the people that owned the motel came to court with some people from Northeast Precinct, and they agreed that they would invite the police to come by at any time the police felt it was necessary, and also that they would require any guest of a person that was renting a room at the hotel to sign in with name and address and picture ID as a process to keep the riffraff out. So those types of things go on, and but with the other things with housing and Bureau of Buildings offenses, our community court coordinator, Robin Gregory, is here back at the coffee and tea table. And Robin, would you please stand up? Robin has done a great job in keeping all the pieces together for the court and Mike's office, and she's been in touch with people with the Bureau of Buildings, and as I understand it, something's in the works on that issue. Is that right, Robin?
Yeah, that's right. Shouldn't we be talking about housing violations? Isn't housing violations and chronic housing violations? We've been working with the Office of Planning and Development Review, whereby the chronic violator cases through an elaborate point system, if they've proven points in a certain period of time will actually be turned over to the district attorney's office for prosecution in the community court, and there Judge Freeman can deal with them similarly to how he deals with other defendants. We can have them do community service, we can try to impress upon them how their actions affect their community. We might be able to link them with resources to help them clean up their properties. So we actually are working with Oxford to work on that issue.
Hi, Jay Bloom, City Club member. I have a question. Excellent program. I'm wondering if there's any plans or thoughts to extend it down to juvenile age.
We've had those discussions, and there's no reason that a lot of the matters that are handled could not be handled in the community. Right now, our goal has just been to get the adult, and we've been working also with traffic citations, and as Robin alluded to, we've been trying to work on housing and figure out how to get that stream in there. One of the things that when we started this, we started as a pilot project, Jay, and as Richard knows, we're wringing our hands because at the Citizens Advisory Group, we wanted to be all things to all people and have everything perfect, letter perfect before we started. And we finally thought, we got to just do it. We got to set a date, get a docket, to get Judge Freeman on the bench and see how it works. And we can always expand. And one of the areas that we've considered expanding is the juvenile area. But also, one of the areas that people wanted to talk about was the landlord-tenant, domestic violence in the community. There's a whole number of areas that, it's a rich area for expansion.
Lily Mandel, member, an excellent presentation, really fantastic. In the prostitution cases, you said you brought in Johns. Have you brought in any pimps?
Nobody has been charged with, I think, procuring. That's a felony. That's a felony.
Oh.
We don't take felony cases at the present time. There was a couple that came in together who were both charged with they approached a decoy, but that's about as close as we got to that.
Reverend Mandel, co-chair of the club's Public Service and Safety Committee. Have you set any limits on the number of times someone can recycle through community court to the point where it is necessary to shift them to somewhat harsher penalties?
We had a limit of 3 times that they would be able to come to community court, and then that limit was removed. A lot of it is up to me, I guess, and I'm trying to think. There's one gentleman that I think has been back about 5 times for stealing, and we've had some other people who've, I think one other person that I think they're up to their 3rd time. But like I say, right now there aren't limits. However, what happens is this. You're able to get certain cases dismissed the first time. Thereafter, it's a sentence of discharge, so it's not as good a deal as time goes on. And we had somebody in court yesterday. Wednesday I was in northeast. Yesterday I was in southeast. We had huge dockets, and both times we got out of there about 7 o'clock, 6:30 or 7 o'clock. But we had a woman out at southeast who had been in northeast and had a case dismissed for stealing somewhere, and then she had, and that was at, I think, the Lloyd Center, and then this time she and some friends were out at Walmart, and she stole something out there. And so they had said, well, there's a rule that you can get one dismissed at northeast and one at southeast, and I said, I don't think so. I think you get one dismissed, and if you just go to another part of town to steal, I'm sorry, you're not going to get a dismissal, you get a sentence of discharge. So, and that's up to me, and that was way I decide to handle it. I also, I didn't mention this, with the theft cases and some of the other cases, I require people to write from 100 to 300 sentences. I will not steal merchandise from stores anymore. I've had a couple of college students who found themselves in jail, and so I had them write a 2-page paper on what it's like to be in jail. Another student came in and said, well, she thought she stole because the aspirin, it was a side effect of the aspirin, caused her to become confused. So I had her write a paper on side effects of pain medication and find out if confusion was one of them. So I try and be creative, and I try and tailor some of the
You think that's a function of having begun in a classroom?
I'm not sure.
Dr. Mandel, let me comment. As you can see, all of you can see, Judge Freeman has a rich imagination. And I think I can't praise him enough, and if the DA praises the judge too much, you think he's in my back pocket. He's not. He's just as likely to rule against our office as with us. But you can see how fortunate we are to have Judge Freeman doing this. And I would hope in your other lives that you encourage our presiding judge to continue Judge Freeman's assignment, but also to cultivate other jurists that would sit in the community. Because it's not easy, and it's not traditional judging.
And I think when you talk about the kinds of crimes that come through and the numbers of times people can come through, I think for some of the crimes, they should be able to come through forever, because nothing really happens when they go downtown unless they violated parole. Mm-hmm. So at least they're standing in front of a judge. At least they're being embarrassed. Your fingers get awful. I don't know if any of you had to write, I will not. But your fingers get awful tired doing that. And if you're a repeat offender, that's going to get old after a while. So I'd like for them to keep coming back.
My question really was, if there is a limit, then would they then get shifted to perhaps the standard judicial system, as a chronic offender, even on pattern of life crimes? Because as a chronic offender, they can appear, if someone is really that disturbed, I would have to say, and keeps repeating the same crime almost compulsively, a quality of life crime, it seems to shift it to a different category and perhaps requires somewhat harsher penalties than simply the community court. That's really the underlying issue in the question I was asking. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Just generally, there's a matrix for sentencing on felonies, but if people have what's called persistent involvement in criminal activity, that's called an aggravating factor, and the district attorney's office can ask for a sentence above what the matrix would usually dictate. And so because there are people, and I had a couple people in the other week, I had one person I think had about 18 drug offenses, another person had 28, and in the matrix, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but unless you commit a person felony, you don't get into the high month sentences. If it's a possession, possession of drugs is low, and it's not very deep, and so sometimes they can request aggravated sentences, and you just have to kind of see what you have. But so, system's prepared to accommodate that.
Nikki Lynch, member. I said this is very interesting to me. I have two questions. One is, what type of community service? I mean, you talked about washing trucks and that sort of thing, and the other is, who is there in the audience besides Richard? I mean, is it mainly the other offenders, or does the community come and observe this and embarrass the people, or that sort of thing?
I'll answer your last question. Citizens are encouraged to come, and citizens come. I facilitate a community meeting once a week, and I encourage folks to come to community court just to sit there and be a presence, to let these folks know that the community does care about what happens to you. They do care about what you're doing in the community. So you have citizens come. Because we were one of the early ones, we also get guests from out of town that come in and want to see how it works. And one of the great things about ours is most community courts around the country started with real estate. You know, we had to have this building, and in some places they even built a building to house the community court. Once you build a building, then you have to keep it going. And I think that that takes away from the homey kind of atmosphere that ours has, because we aren't concerned about the building. We're concerned because space is becoming a problem, but we wanted to get it going. And we started early, and we've learned a lot, and we can answer a lot of questions, and as a result, we get a lot of folks from out of town that want to see what we're doing.
People have performed community service with neighborhood gardens. There are a couple neighborhood gardens in Northeast Portland where people have helped with those programs. Different community organizations have cleanup drives where they're picking up trash and the like, and they've done that. If there are parades, they've helped people clean up after the parades. They've helped people set up stands for community events. They've also done work at the Red Cross agency, washing trucks and the like. And also in Southeast Portland, the community advisory committee has been quite active, and I can usually count on seeing from 3 to half a dozen or more of those members in the court whenever court shows up. And they have volunteers that come and help set the court up, which includes getting the flags out, and they've got a portable kind of dais like we have here that they will set up, and so that's community people as well.
We have time for a couple of excellent written questions from members of the audience. This is for all of our panelists. Community court seems predicated on the ability to shame or educate offenders into changing their ways. Mentally ill people often don't respond to the same tactics. Please explain what Portland plans to do to provide services that enhance safety in communities that suffer from mentally ill offenders.
Let me take a crack at answering that. For a long time, we've been working with the mental health community. And we think right now that what we can do is create the docket, craft the sentence, and our gap is housing and monitoring. And we're working with the county mental health. In fact, there was a team Tuesday, went to San Bernardino to visit a model mental health. They have about 35 to 40 people in the mental health court right now, but they have housing and monitored housing, and that's the big need right now. As you know, and I see across the Deputy District Attorney's desk every day, people acting out that had they been monitored on taking their meds or their medication, had they had a little bit of structure, they would not have done conduct that resulted in a 911 call and resulted in someone coming in, a case where we end up prosecuting as a felony oftentimes. We're looking initially at the mental health court for felons, and this is a risky business. We think misdemeanors, they're pretty easy, but we're trying to explore with the sheriff, with the county mental health, with private contractors, and with the mental health consumer community. And there is, those of you who monitor this, I think it's NAMI, Jay, help me out, is the NAMI. They opposed forced mental health treatment. Our answer to that is, well, we will prosecute you and let you sit in jail, but if you can agree to go on this mental health track, it will be a lot better. I don't know, but this will not be done without some sort of a firestorm in the community. There will be criticism of the justice community for venturing in. And let me just make a pitch. I've been your DA for darn near 20 years. Excuse me. I love the job, believe me. And you continually see these mental health people come through. And you think, but for. In the mental health community, although they get funding, in my opinion, they've always been underfunded. And the safety net or the default system is always 911, get a cop, go see your DA and file a charge. Well, it's too late then. We've got to speak up, and I would encourage you to get some sort of